largest concentration of African Canadians in Canada. My background is Black loyalist, Maroon, and Micmac Indian. When the Black loyalists who fought for the British were promised 10 acres of land, which they didn't all get, finally came to Nova Scotia in the late 1700s, they were placed in Preston on rocky land in late fall with little or no provision and expected not to last through the winter.
Sorry, Marion. We were having some sort of technical difficulties and the sound was not necessarily coming through. So if we can just start over, I'm going to introduce and then we can just kind of start over so everybody can be caught up. Okay, so we already prayed and introduced. I'm so sorry that everybody could not hear us. But what we are doing today is we're learning a bit more about who we are as Black Canadians, and learning some things that we necessarily might not have known before, and helping us to understand that we were here, we made contributions, things were happening here for us, and yeah, we had a journey here. So we have Sister Marion Byard, and she is going to be presenting to us about a little bit about herself, and then also about some facts that we may or may not know, as I said before. So a little bit about Marion is that she was born in North Preston in 1953, and that's in Nova Scotia. She moved to Toronto in 1983, and she worked with the Nova Scotia Black United Front, the Black Ontario History Society, and is currently employed with the Canada Post Corporation. And so she's going to share her story and some tidbits. Sister Marion.
Okay. As I said, I'd like to thank Shiloh for the invitation to join in your Black History celebration. I have been involved in Black history for more than 40 years, but this is the first time anybody has asked me to give my story. A little bit nervous, but I've typed it and I hope you don't mind that I will read it. I am number 18 of 19 children from a segregated Black community on the outskirts of Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, called Preston. It has the largest concentration of African Canadians in Canada. My background is Black loyalist, Maroon, and Micmac Indian. When the Black loyalists who fought for the British were promised 10 acres of land, which they didn't all get, finally came to Nova Scotia in the late 1700s, they were placed in Preston on rocky land in late fall and not expected, or with little or no provisions, and not expected to last through the cold winter. But God, in his mercy, saw fit to introduce them to the Micmacs, who taught them not only to survive, but how to thrive. And when the British came back the following summer, they found a thriving community. A few years later, the Maroons were brought from Jamaica to Nova Scotia and placed in Preston. Many left in the 1800s for Sierra Leone, Africa. It was too cold. Preston had a bad reputation with whites and Blacks. People were told not to go there, not to hire people from there, and that bad things happened to people who went there. The real story is, if you come to Preston looking for trouble, you will find it tenfold. But if you come looking for friendship, you will find that 100-fold. People from home, as I still call it, would ask if you were hungry, feed you, and then ask if you needed anything else. Preston is full of strong, loving, beautiful people. My birth mother died. Ida was her name, died when I was 2.5 years old. And my dad, Peter, remarried when I was 7 years old to a wonderful lady named Bridget, who raised and nurtured us. My dad was strict and loving, and Mom, Bridget, was loving and soft. We always had to be inside before dark. Daddy worked as a laborer at the Air Force Base in a place called Shearwater. He made a very decent wage. He came home every night from work with a treat in his lunchbox. After supper, we had chores, homework, fun and games, along with Daddy's treat. We had a well on our property, no running water, and had to have water inside at night before bedtime. We had 2 wood stoves. We didn't get gas heat until I was in my early teens. We had an outhouse or an outside toilet in my younger years. My dad raised cows, pigs, and chickens, and there was always a garden, and we had fruit trees. Everyone had their chores to perform, and there was no fooling around about getting them done. Daddy would not have that. A couple of our yearly activities were picking blueberries for sale in the city during the summer and making and selling wreaths during the winter. I had some serious health problems all through my childhood. I spent a lot of time in and out of the hospital and more time in the house than my siblings. This allowed me to become very close to my stepmother, who really acted like my birth mother. We talked a lot, and she taught me so many things. From as young as I can remember, I wanted to know where we came from and how we got here, but nobody seemed to be able to tell me. I told myself I would find out. There were a few corner stores in the community, but for any major shopping, we had to go to Halifax or Dartmouth, and it was a treat if you were asked to go. The church was a very important part of our life and community. Both my parents were very active in the church, and they made sure we all had a sound biblical grounding. That is where I got the cement that became the foundation for my personality. I learned who God is, what Jesus did for the world, and that what we do in this world should reflect the love of Jesus. I was 8 years old when I joined the community club choir, founded and directed by my mom. We sang at the Nova Scotia legislature, many churches and organizations all over the province. There were choirs for all age groups. I was baptized at age 12 and almost immediately began working in St. Thomas United Baptist Church, where we worshiped. We had 3 worship services every Sunday. I held several positions before my move to Toronto in church. My parents were also part of a group of adults that provided activities for the young people. There were Boy Scouts, Canadian Girls in Training, Baptist Youth People's Union, which was later called Baptist Youth Fellowship, and then there were the Explorers, which was for the group of younger people, very young. I was sent for majorette training in Dartmouth, brought back my skills to the community, and had fun teaching the other girls. The majorettes joined the Dartmouth Natal Day Parade for many years and won a trophy almost every year. Many years we placed first. The adults were creative, and there were many other activities as well as dances for the teenagers. My parents, along with some other parents, were instrumental in getting a community center, the first daycare center, first fire department, and the first medical center built in the Preston area. My dad was very adamant that his children got a decent education. So thanks to him, I became a bookworm and had a thirst to learn and know everything. We went to Nelson Winder School, an all-Black school in the community. The teachers were Black and East Indian, and the principal was Black. I was a good student and skipped 2 grades, which made me very young when I was bused to a mixed high school outside of the community. It was culture shock. I was in the hotbed of discrimination, Blacks against whites. The teachers and administration, who were mostly white and racist, made it difficult. I realized that the education we received in Preston did not prepare us for the next leg of the learning journey. Many dropped out of high school. For the first time in my life, I had to study really hard and get extra help. I went to the guidance counselor to ask for help with math. He said he could put me in an adjusted math class. He also told me I was not college material. I left his office determined to find another way to get the help I needed. I was fortunate. The algebra teacher offered to help and tutored me through that year. The vice principal was extremely racist. He often said, "Get out of the halls, you little black flies." And no one challenged him until one day near the end of my first year. 2 of my friends and I decided to go sit outside and wait for the next class. The English class finished early, and the teacher told us we could either go to the library or sit outside until the next class. The vice principal saw us and said in a gruff tone, "Go to your class." I responded, "We don't have a class now. The teacher finished early and told us we could go outside for 10 minutes. We'll go in soon." He used derogatory racist names and said, "I said go to your class." I responded, "There is no class to go to yet. You don't have the right to call me those kinds of names. You don't know me, but if you think I'm a little black pickaninny, you must be a red-faced German." He told me to go to the office, and I responded, "Gladly," because I had a good relationship with the principal. I went and recounted my event to the principal, who told me I was suspended for a week and to stay in the office for the rest of the day. I responded to him, "We'll see what my dad has to say about this." When it was time to go home, all the students knew that I, the quiet little nerd, was in trouble. I told my dad what happened when he got home. He took the next day off from work and took me to school with him. He warned me not to speak. I watched how he dealt with the principal and the vice principal. He asked why I was suspended. The principal responded, "Because she was rude to the vice principal." Daddy said I told him that the vice principal called me derogatory names, and he looked at the vice principal and asked him if that was accurate. The vice principal responded, "I don't recall." My dad said, "I raise my children respectfully, and I don't want anyone to misuse them." He told them how important education is to him and how valuable it is for his children's future. He then told the principal that he wanted me back in class that day, and he wanted the name calling to stop immediately. I then asked if I could say something, and Daddy said, "Yes," but he gave me a look. that said, "Don't make me regret my decision." I looked at the vice principal and said, "I've been here for almost a full school year, and I've heard you mistreat Black students and call them derogatory names every day. If you are unable to function properly in a mixed race environment, you shouldn't be here." He didn't respond. The principal told me to go to class, and I smiled. The next year, the vice principal did not come back. Racial tensions at schools in Nova Scotia have continued for many decades and have made national news many times. I finished school way too young, only 16, but I knew even then what I wanted to do with my life. My dad wanted me to go to college or university, but I knew he couldn't afford it. So I found a job to pay for it at a prominent grocery store in the city of Dartmouth called IGA. One day, one of my duties that I learned there in my 6 months was how to use the cash register. One day, I was the only cashier, and a middle-aged white lady came in the store, picked up her groceries, and put them on the empty cash register. I told her I would cash them in for her, but she ignored me. My white colleague came by and asked what was going on. I told her, and she said to the lady, "I'm still on lunch. This girl will cash out your groceries." The lady said, "I don't want those little black hands on my groceries." Started to cry, and the manager came out and asked her what's wrong. The girl told him, and he said to the lady, "If you don't want this cashier to cash out your groceries, please leave the store." The lady left, but a few months later, I was let go because white people were boycotting the store. I didn't let it color my resolve. I remembered my training, and I found another job as a cashier at a department store in Halifax. I saved the money I needed to enroll the next year in a private business school called Miss Murphy's Business College. I finished my 4 years of business and then started looking for a job. Nova Scotia was very racist then, and to some extent, it still is. I remember sending my resume to one company who said I should come for an interview the next day. When I arrived, I was told the position was filled. Miss Murphy's was a well-known, reputable college, and students from there received very good jobs. They didn't expect a Black girl from Preston to have graduated from there. In the late 60s, the riots and murder of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the United States, along with visits from some freedom fighters, made things a bit better for some of us as we finished school. I finally took a job with the government of Nova Scotia at the Nova Scotia Housing Commission. By then, my dad had passed away, but not before I was in my second year of college. Shortly after joining the Housing Commission, I met Butch Byard from Truro, Nova Scotia. We got married and had a daughter. I decided to leave my government job to stay home 1 year with my daughter. After that, I got a job with the Black United Front of Nova Scotia. This is when I found out that there is Black history in Canada. The history books I read in school failed to mention that William Hall was a Black man. I remembered the promise I made to myself and began to feed the hunger to find other prominent Blacks and search our story. I promised myself my daughter would never feel the emptiness of thinking we contributed nothing to Canada and the world. I am still searching and finding that Blacks have contributed to Canada and the world from the earliest of times, and we continue to contribute in a big way. In 1983, my husband, who worked for Via Rail, got transferred to Toronto. So we came here, and we then worshiped at First Baptist Church, which has a rich history of its own. I quickly became very active in the church life, almost as if I had not left Nova Scotia. I had a few jobs in the private sector here, and then in the early 1990s, worked for the Ontario Black History Society. I was at the Ontario Black History Society working as office administrator when the proposal we asked the Honorable Jean Augustine to present to Parliament in 1995 was unanimously passed in the House of Commons, declaring February as Black History Month in the whole country. I was alone in the office when the confirmation call came. I called the president, Rosemary Sadler, to give her the good news. I cannot explain how I felt. My childhood dream had more than come true. I had found out where we came from, how we got here, and the contributions we have made. And now I was in a position to tell our story. God truly is faithful and has an amazing sense of humor. I left the Black History Society in 2000. I didn't know at that time that God would use me to spread our story even further. From 2000 until 2020, I created Black History displays, invited prominent Blacks to speak, introduced people of other cultures to our food, our clothing, our history, our lives, and our contributions in Canada. Through Canada Post, where I was working, I realized that I too have a role to play in Canadian Black history. I may never be in a history book or on a poster, but I have a part to play, which is largely because of the heroes in my life. Although our school books had no Black heroes, our heroes were the church and community leaders who mentored us and told us that with a good education, we had a chance to be anything we could put our minds to. They told us not to let racism become who we are and to rise above it. A few of my heroes are, first of all, William Hall. He was the one who began my journey into discovering Black history. William Hall, born in 1827 and died 1904, was born in Hortons Bluff, Nova Scotia. He was the son of former slaves. As a young man, Hall worked in shipyards in Hantsport, Nova Scotia. And by age 18, he had visited most of the world's important ports as a merchant sailor. My heart, my dream. In 1847, he joined the US Navy and was there until 1850 when he was discharged. In 1852, he joined the British Royal Navy. He received the Victoria Cross for his actions in the siege of Lucknow, India, during the Crimean War. Hall, an officer of the HMS Shannon, after the rest of his crew members had been killed or injured, continued to load and fire a 24-pounder gun at the walls of Shah Nujef Mosque until he broke through, which allowed the British soldiers to go in and take control. Hall was the first Nova Scotian, one of 3 Canadians, and the first Black Canadian to receive the Victoria Cross for his bravery. It's the highest honor a British subject can ever receive. The next one was Viola Desmond, born in 1914 and died in 1965. She was Halifax born and a businesswoman. She is often referred to as Canada's Rosa Parks. 9 years before Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on the bus in Alabama, Viola Desmond refused to give up her seat in a movie theater in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia. She was removed from the theater, spent a night in jail, and fined $20 plus court costs for allegedly defrauding the government of 19 cents extra tax for the downstairs seat. She was also sentenced to 30 days in prison, but the Nova Scotia Association for the Advancement of Colored People championed her case, and the Clarion newspaper, run by Carrie Best, published the story and helped to put an end to that discrimination. Viola Desmond was posthumously pardoned April 14, 2010, and has forever been etched in the pages of Canadian history. She was chosen in 2016 as the first woman and first ever Black person to appear on Canadian currency, our $10 bill. The next was Dr. Josephine Johnson, who was my cousin, 1930, and she died in 2016. She was born in North Preston, Nova Scotia, and began her formal school training in a one-room school in New Road, which was the then name for North Preston. She pursued high school and further training in early childhood education. She received an honorary doctorate degree in 2010. She was the director of the North Preston Daycare Center from 1971 until she retired in 2002. She is the recipient of many certificates and awards for her volunteer work over the years. She was a member of the St. Thomas United Baptist Church and served in many capacities, one of which was church historian from 1950. She, along with her husband Arnold, who served in the Second World War, were instrumental in working with other parents in North Preston to establish many groups and organizations. Now next, I call her a little Spitfire, Dr. Carrie Best, who was my friend and mentor, born in 1903 and died in 2001 in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia. In 1946, she became the first Black Nova Scotian to own and publish a newspaper, and her newspaper was called The Clarion. In 1954, she began her radio program called The Quiet Hour. It aired on CBC out of Halifax. During her lifetime, Dr. Best has been granted many awards. Some are Order of Canada, Order of Nova Scotia, Harry Jerome Award, and she received an honorary doctorate from St. Francis Xavier University. Another person is Ruth Johnston. She was a former resident of Africville who was known for her community work. She was the president of the Black Cultural Society and received the Harry Jerome Award for distinguished community service. Reverend Dr. W.P. Oliver, born in 1912, died in 1989. Reverend Oliver was one of 3 members of the Black community in Nova Scotia that had a university degree before 1930. He pastored at Cornwallis Street Baptist Church in Halifax from 1937 to 1962, and then at Lucasville Baptist Church until his death in 1989. He was instrumental in developing the 4 leading organizations to support Black Nova Scotians in the 20th century. And they are Nova Scotia Association for the Advancement of Colored People in 1945, the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission in 1967, the Black United Front in 1969, and the Black Cultural Center in 1983. Dr. Oliver was awarded the Order of Canada in 1984, and I personally remember Dr. Oliver and his wife Pearline, who spent a lot of time at my parents' home. His wife Pearline was in her own right a strong advocate for social justice. There are so many other Black Nova Scotians who have helped to shape my life, and I'll give you a lot of those names. Reverend Donald Skeer, Calvin Ruck, Irene Reddick, who was my principal, Reverend Donald Fairfax, Reverend J.C. Max, Portia White, Buddy Day, Sam Langford, Doreen Lewis, George Dixon, Brad Barton, Edith Cromwell, Edith Sparks, Wayne Adams, Burnley Rocky Jones, Dave Downey, Clyde Gray, and so many more. We were surrounded by heroes, and we didn't always know it. Even with all of those people around me, my biggest heroes were my parents. My mom and dad shaped me and molded me. And that is the Reader's Digest version of my story. But I would like to finish with some tidbits from Black history. The Black church has always played a significant role in the Black community. The stories and their stories can be found in the following books: The Nova Scotia Black Experience Through the Centuries by Brigdell Pachow, We've Come This Far by Faith by Dr. Josephine Johnson, and Reflections by Carolyn Thomas. That's only a few of them. There are other places you can find them. The Black contributions to the wars: the War of 1812, the Crimean War, War of the First and Second World War, the Korean War, the Iraqi War, and current day. Blacks have always defended Canada. This is a subject I think is way too vast to cover today. It needs a time all by itself. We have always served and many times been mistreated, but we continue to serve because this is our country. Blacks in sports, from Sam Langford in 1884 to current day hockey and basketball. Stars, basketball stars, there have always been Canadian in sports. Against all odds, they rise. Racism and injustice has not been able to hold them back. That's another subject. We'll leave it today. The Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. This story is told very vividly in a book entitled My Name's Not George by Stanley Grizzell, and also in the Nova Scotia Black Experience Through the Centuries by Dr. Pachai. Africville, what to say about Africville? This was a small community of predominantly Black Canadians on the southern shore of the Bedford Basin in Halifax. And it was there from the 1800s until the 1960s, when it was condemned by the city of Halifax in order for them to develop the nearby McKay Bridge and the port of Halifax. The land was taken away and the people were displaced. Business and enterprise, again, a subject that deserves to be told all by itself. There are so many who have forged a living while contributing to Canadian society. Blacks in arts and entertainment, from Portia White, who sang for royalty, to current day artists, writers, performers. There have always been those who have risen to the top, traveled far and near to spread our story in song, dance, word, on the stage and on the screen. And these are, I'd just like to leave you with a couple of firsts. Matthew DaCosta was the first known Black to visit Canada, and he was a free man. And he came in the early 1600s. And Olivier Lejeune was the first known Black resident of Canada. We have an amazing history and we have a lot of stories to tell. And again, thank you very much.
Wow, that was amazing, amazing, amazing. Yes, round of applause. Full of information, and I love that you incorporated a lot of the historical tidbits that we might be looking for, even within your own story. Have been exposed to those individuals as you were growing up. Um, and I think it was a very powerful moment for me to hear how you had the courage to stand up for yourself, but not only for yourself, but for your community, for us as Black individuals, to those who presented a threat to our community. And I applaud you for that. I applaud you for that. um, so for right now, no. Um, okay. Right now, we are going to have a little question and answer period. And in this way, the audience and also the panel can engage.
You're getting feedback from somewhere.
Yeah, I think it's Sister Gemma. But anyway, um, right now we're gonna have some question and answer period where the audience can share their questions on the platform that they're viewing on. Put that in the chat box, and we'll be able to bring that forth. Please keep it within what we were speaking about today, so that we can best answer, or Sister Marian can best answer that question for you. Also, there are a bunch of resources that she had shared, and that is also in the description box of the YouTube video live stream. So if you wanted to take a look at the resources and some of the information that she might have mentioned, you will find that in the description box. So we introduced you as being from North Preston. And I personally know that as one of the communities, one of the Black communities within Nova Scotia, and you introduced it as such. Would you be able to let us know what are the other Black communities that are found
Okay.
in Nova Scotia?
Wow, there are lots of them. Let's see, which ones can I remember? Birchtown was one of the first. There's East Preston, Cherrybrook. Um, as I mentioned, Africville, which has been demolished. Let's see, Lincolnville. Oh my goodness, Windsor Plains, Hammond's Plains. Let's see, where is down where your grandma's from? What's that called?
Isn't it Digby?
Digby, Digby,
Yeah.
Digby. There are Blacks in all over Nova Scotia. Uh, Edie, where are you? I can't remember all of them, but there are, where's my map? I have a map here that will tell me. Hold on a minute. There's a map here that tells me. Oh, Kentville. How could I forget Kentville, Conway, Lakeel. I went to a lot of these places. Yarmouth, Birchtown, Danvers, Weymouth Falls is what I was looking for. Jordantown. Oh wow. Um, Maroon Hill, Cobbard Road, Lucasville, Spring Hill, Trenton, New Glasgow, Truro, Monastery, Mulgrave. There's Upper Big Trackety and Lower Big Trackety, Lincolnville, Sunnyville, North Sydney, they call it, New Waterford, Glace Bay, and Sydney Mines and Liverpool. So
Wow.
we're all over Nova Scotia.
Wow, that's amazing. You did mention that the Blacks who first came here were able to kind of link up, if I if I should say so, link up with the Micmacs, and they were able to able to kind of help us learn how to navigate the land and all that stuff. To your knowledge, do you know of any other time where those communities both kind of shared an experience together?
Well, they must have experienced, I don't know personally, but they must have, because there are many of us who are their offspring. So I don't know in today's world that we do, but we do. Well, since I've been in Toronto, I have, and there are many Nova Scotians in Toronto who interact with other. What do they don't call it Micmac here, and they don't call it Indian. They call it Native, the Native community here. So there are times, I mean, there are people who do, but I have a nephew who is part of the Native Council
Mm-hmm.
for Ontario, for the country, the federally.
Nice. Um, so when it comes to the land, the land that was afforded to you guys, and how it was tumultuous and all that, and they came back and were surprised that we were still thriving. Um, with that being said, how did we, as Blacks, how did we make a living? Like, how was a typical lifestyle for those who, let's say, specifically lived in North Preston, where you were from?
Well, I think in the early days, what the men went to work for other people for very small wages, and the women went to clean people's houses and take care of the kids.
Okay.
My parents said that would not be for their children.
Mm. The panel, do you have any questions that you would like to ask Marion at this time? Go ahead.
If I may,
Oh, go ahead, Judy.
okay. If I may say, Marion, first, thank you. A very impressive story. What a wealth of information that you have shared. And I'm sure the rest of the panel members would agree with me. It will take probably months, if not years, to really unpack all that you have shared with us today. It's a story not only of struggle, not only of suppression, not only a story of racism, but it's also a story of determination, perseverance. And I'm really happy that you are able to share that's your story with us today. And some of the things that so many things, I don't know where to begin. But one of the points I want to touch on is where you spoke about the role of the church. And you mentioned that a few times in your discourse. Can you just tell us a bit more? How did the church influence you to become the type of person that you are in terms of your strength, your resilience? What role did the church play?
Okay. Well, when I can't even remember, I grew up in the church. The church was always there. My parents took us, and as I mentioned, 3 services a Sunday, and we were at church 3 times every Sunday. And it wasn't, for me, I didn't find that it was boring or arduous, because they made it fun. They made it feel like you were, and as we grew, it became a part of, well, for me anyway, who I was. I learned a lot at church. I watched how the elders in the church acted, how they took their lives to another level and rose above the struggles and the things that were in their way. And then when I was baptized, I learned something even greater. not only did they do that, but Jesus went through what he went through to for us. So I don't know. The church has always been, it's always been my go-to. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Yes, yes, in part. Yeah. And the other piece that, as a connection to that, given your story, as I've said before, it's quite a story to share. What advice would you give a young Black person today struggling to make it or going through some difficulties, some challenges, whether it's at school, and we know that in this, we know what the school system is like, and a number of our children, many of our children do experience struggles at school. What advice would you give to them?
It may sound different for me to say this. Trust God. Ask him for direction, because he will lead you in the right way to go, because that is exactly what happened to me. When I left that office that I talked about, I didn't go to my friends. I said, God, direct me to the place you want me to go to get the help I need. And before that day had ended, I was still feeling sad for myself. And the algebra teacher, an East Indian man, asked me why my face was down, because normally I had a bubbly personality. And he asked, why are you? And I said, I'm not doing well in math and I don't know what to do. And I told him that I went for help and I couldn't. And he said he couldn't help me. And he said, if you're willing, I will tutor you twice a week and you will learn if you're determined. I said, I'm determined and I will take the tutoring. And I asked how much, and he said for free. So
Wow.
I believe that God will direct our path if we trust him. And that is my advice to young people today. Don't get hot-headed, don't get angry, trust God.
Amen. A very powerful statement. And I think let me just pause here and open it to the other panel members, because I have so many questions to ask, but I'll open it to other panel members.
You know, Sister Joan.
I have a question, and it's somewhat on the lighter side. Now, you mentioned growing up with 18 siblings. What was that like?
I was small and short, and they were always bigger. I was small, short, and sickly, and I was always in the background because nobody could see me. It was a lot of times it was fun, and sometimes it was kind of crazy, but I became loud mouthed because they couldn't see me, so I had to project my voice. So I still am a little bit loud mouthed, but it was fun. We had our own baseball team. We had our own.
Oh. Like I grew up in a family of 6, and I know sometimes the rivalry was intense. So I'm just, but I think that was beautiful though.
Yeah, we didn't have much rivalry. Daddy wouldn't allow that.
Right.
Yeah, but we had a lot of fun and games.
Great.
Okay, I'd like to ask a question. Are you finished? Okay. It says it takes a village to raise a child. And I know you indicated about that East Indian teacher in your school. 2 questions. One, do you know the relationship between that East Indian teacher and the rest of the white teachers, if they were in conflict with each other? Or?
I don't know, but I can tell you that I don't know because I was very young at the time and and in some ways very naive. but I can tell you that he was almost always alone. The man I remember, I will never forget his face, his name, or his personality. There are many things I remember about that man, but the one thing I remember is his kindness. He was a very kind man, but all I know, he was kind, and he was quick enough to discover that I was somebody looking for help, not looking to how can I say, not looking to for a free load. I just wanted to help myself to a better life, and he was willing to help me with that.
Was he the only colored person in that school at that time? The only colored teacher in that school?
No, the colored teacher I went to at the guidance counselor was also East Indian.
Okay. Another, one more question. In the community, you listed several communities in Nova Scotia. Because of the amount of racism that were there at the time, have the communities get together to somehow protect the people?
The AUBA was at the church, as I said, that was the place to be, the place to go. The AUBA, the African United Baptist Churches, every year, once a year, had a conference. But that was a big conference. And then they had a conference for the young people. And they had a men's conference, and they had a women's conference. So we went from community to community. That's why I said I've been to most of these places, because we went when there were conferences, and there were people came to us, or we went to them. So the church united the people. It almost all of our activities were at the church. That started at the church.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Correct. I'm sure. I am sure. Do the research, but I'm sure. As I said, our background is a lot of us are maroon background, so we have Jamaican background. I had an uncle who always said that his grandfather told him he was from the Mota Spain. For most Trinis, you will know that the Mota Spain is Trinidad, Port of Spain, right? Yeah. So you know. So we have it there, and almost every West Indian I've ever known that have come to Canada, to Nova Scotia, where I'm from, to North Preston, says this is like home. And I went to when I went to Trinidad for the first time, I said, "Oh my goodness, I have come home." It is very similar. The way the people live is similar, but I mean, it's not exact, but it's similar.
Can I ask another question? And I must really thank you for the wealth of information that you have shared with us. You know, today we have like Black Lives Matter that advocate for social justice for for Blacks. Was there an equivalent in that time period? Like, who was advocating for Blacks at that time in terms of social justice?
The Nova Scotia Association for the Advancement of Colored People. That was it was them, and then it was BUF. Well, we called it BUF, but it was Black United Front.
Okay, I have a question. Marion, thank you very much for sharing with us.
You're welcome.
By the way, my dad was born in Nova Scotia. He was born in Glace Bay.
Oh, yay.
But he wasn't raised there, but he was born there.
Okay.
What was the temperament of your mom and your dad? I'm just curious.
Say that again.
What's the temperament of your mom and your dad?
The temperament?
Yeah.
Oh, my dad loved fun. My birth mother died when I was 2.5, so I didn't really get to know her. But my mom, as I call her, who raised me, Bridget, was an amazing woman. I'm gonna tell you guys something that I didn't include in my story. My dad's education was grade 6, which was considered an excellent education then. My mom was grade 3, but she was one of the smartest people I ever knew in my life. When my parents died, there were still 19, well, my second mother had children of her own. But when she died, there were enough awards from between the two of them that each one of us could take one. So they were fun. They made sure. My dad loved to go take us for drives. He loved to tease and carry on. And my mom was very quiet, but she was great. I was well raised by great rounded parents.
Okay. Was there much intermarrying at that time?
Pardon?
Was there much intermarrying during your time there?
Blacks and whites? Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. I didn't see any anyway.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question. Hi, Marion. So nice to have you, and thank you so much for sharing with us. Okay. During your earlier years in school, hearing those hurtful words that, you were not college material and black fly really stood out to me, because as a nation, we've been called so many names. And, when you think about a fly is bothersome, right? We always try to swat flies away, right? We think flies are unpleasant. Nothing pleasant comes to mind when you think about a fly. So as a young child, how did this negativity propel you into achieving your goals? Because as I hear you speak, you're well accomplished, well learned. So how did that help you? How did you step up from that negativity in pursuing your goals?
I refused because of the training that we received and the mentoring from church members and family and community members. I refused to be held back, and knowing that I could do better. So hearing those words, they said, don't take those kind of things to heart. Don't let them drag you down. You don't let that kind of stuff stop you from making the achievements and doing the things God has planned for you, because he has a better life for you. So
that's right. Thank you.
I would like to say, even now, 2021, last week, my family members and people in that same Preston were battling with racism again. A site called Move It, whatever it's called, posted a racist slur regarding the place. It said, the fastest way to get to Niggerville, North Preston. And it gave the directions to where I'm from, where I was born. And even in 2021, we still battle the same thing.
Okay, thank you so much.
Wow, that's a loaded question. And many of those communities have integrated, and there are a lot of fair-skinned people. But where I'm from, you will see a lot of people looking like me and darker. There are some integrations, but for the most part, we've kept our, and I'd like to say, integrity.
There is another question here, and it said, how did you cope when you were let go from the IGA store because you were Black, and what made you continue to go on? It's kind of similar to something that we touched on earlier, but
Wow, that is very good. I went home and I told my mom, I said, and not my dad, I told my mom, I said, that was my last day at the store. I said, the owner said that people are not coming to the store, they're boycotting the store, and he's got to let me go because of business. It wasn't personal on his part, but I don't have a job anymore. She said, tomorrow when your dad goes to work, you get a ride to Halifax and you go look for a job. So because of the influence in my life, they didn't allow me to be held down.
Okay, that's wonderful. So when you were answering the other question about integration and race mixing, when it comes to Nova Scotia's I guess demographics on a whole, do you see that there are some race mixing in general, or is it predominantly still segregated?
No, there's race mixing all over, but I think the Preston area still has the largest amount of predominantly Black people, but there's race mixing all over. There are communities that you would go in and I'm being honest, I've gone in and wondered, where are the Black people? But you look at them and they look very, very fair. You don't know that they're Black, but they claim Black because they have the ancestry.
Right. Interesting.
Those who left for Sierra Leone, did any of them ever come back to the area, or?
No, but there are people who went to visit them.
Is that right? Okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's interesting. I just wanted to mention back where I'm from Grenada, there is actually a settlement of Sierra Leone, people from Sierra Leone in the island of Carriacou. So I don't know if you ever heard of Carriacou.
I've been to Grenada.
Oh, great. So it's a small island off the coast of Grenada. And some Sierra Leoneans have settled there after slavery.
Yeah, they came back.
Yes.
So I have a question. When I was in university, and I studied sociology, and I was looking for some information. I was taking a race relations class, and I was looking for some information about Black Canadians, contribution of Black Canadians, and for the most part, I when I did a quick Google search, there was hardly anything, and I felt that was pretty disappointing, and that led me to wanting to write a paper on the erasure of Black history in textbooks and in education specifically. So for someone who may be looking for finding Black history contributions made by us, or just significant moments or individuals, where would you suggest starting?
If you're in Ontario, the Ontario Black History Society. If you're in Nova Scotia, the Black Cultural Society. It depends on the area where you are. There's a society in Quebec. I cannot pronounce the name, but they have one in Quebec. In New Brunswick, they have almost every province. I don't know of one in PEI, but almost every province has a Black history section. even and at the West Coast, it's full. So we're all over Canada, and there is representation that there are societies that take care of our history.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. And that with a quick Google search of those associations, we would be able to find them, correct?
Good. Yeah, but if you go to which book is it? Dr. Pachai's plus Rosemary Sadler's, or what's the name of it? It's on the list, and I don't have the. Do I have the list? Rosemary Sadler.
For those who are wondering what list that she's referring to, it is linked in our bio for some of the resources that she had
Yeah,
shared.
you'll find some in Dr. Dan Hill's book as well, but Rosemary Sadler has a bigger list. I think it's Leading the Way. And then Trials and Triumph also has a good number. But there are, and the list of resources I gave you is a portion of my Black history I've been collecting for years.
Yes.
Sure. Right. I don't know that there is one, but I don't know how strong it is. I know that there is definitely, if you go East Coast, Black community, Baptist. That's the word, Baptist.
Okay. When you moved to Toronto, First Baptist Church, was Reverend Mead the presiding person there when you came?
He was. The strangest thing is, when I left because I was so active in the church in Nova Scotia, Reverend Mead and Reverend Skier knew each other. Reverend Skier sent a message to Reverend Mead saying, she's coming. This is what she does. So when I came on, I think a Friday, I arrived. And the Saturday I got a call saying, oh, you guys, you and your daughter sing. We're having something next week at church. We want you guys to come and sing. And then I went to the church. Well, we went to the church that Sunday. And the next Sunday, Reverend Mead said, I got this from Reverend Skier. And this is what you do. I can't put you right away, but before I was there, we came in November. And by January, I was installed in almost everything I was doing in the East Coast, I was doing here.
Okay. Because the question I had for you is if you were involved in any of the choirs there.
Oh, yeah.
I know music was very important at First Baptist Church.
Yeah.
Very important. I've been there a number of times.
I started singing in the choir in Nova Scotia when I was 8 years old.
So when you were at First Baptist, was Osby Nash playing music for you guys?
He had just left, before I came, I think.
Okay.
Mr. Nash, right?
Osby Nash, lady.
Lady, yes. I think she had just left. She used to play for the senior choir.
Right, I remember that.
She was just leaving just when I was coming.
Okay.
We have another question, and it says, with all the advancement that you and others before you have made in the Black community, do you see us moving forward? Do you see this generation as passionate as the people who were in the past?
Oh, for sure. Passion is especially home, because I told you about the thing with Move It, and then last year or a year before last, there was some other thing that came up. The issues never seem to end, but and I don't know if that's to keep the passion rolling or what, but the young people home are, and in Nova Scotia, I should say, the ones I know are still pretty passionate about making advancements and getting, getting the story right and getting things done. I have several people who I know are writing books. I have friends who are telling their story on the stage and on the radio. So the passion is there, but whether it will make the changes that we need it to make is another story. My daughter said to me actually today, she said, the significant changes won't happen until Jesus comes. So we keep fighting the fight, knowing that we have to keep trying, but the real change won't come until he makes it.
Oh, I see. Yeah, for sure.
So if someone was moving to Nova Scotia from Toronto, what would you tell them?
Take your thick skin with you.
Pardon?
Take your thick skin with you. Don't let, because truthfully how do I say, Nova Scotia is complex, because when I go home, people will, white people will meet me on the street and say, good morning, good afternoon. They've never met me. They don't know me, but they will greet me. But if for some reason my daughter were to try to intermarry with their son, well, then no, or I'm coming to work with them every day, that's another story.
Mm-hmm.
And not all of I should say, not all of them are like that, because one of the heroes that I never put on paper, I really should have, was a white man.
Mm-hmm.
His name was Captain Donald Dennison. He was my dad's friend. And he also was one of the people who who inspired me to fight for my dream, because he knew from little that I wanted to travel and go to every continent before I died. And he said, don't let anything stop you. He was one of the people who got me involved or interested in art. He went somewhere, came back, and brought me back a piece of artwork. And I've been a collector since then. So I don't know. It's complex. It's hard to say. The only thing I would say is don't let people small-minded people who don't really know what you're about, keep you back.
Okay.
Awesome. And as a final question, as we wrap up now, what suggestions would you have for the church today to get involved in our communities to help our presence continue within the community as you saw it as you were growing up?
Wow. I would say use the same model they used, because it worked then, and I believe it will still work. The important thing for the church to do is to show that we care. That's to be there and show that we care. If you invest in somebody's life, they're not going to remember how much you gave them. They're not going to remember what you wore, but they will remember if you were there. If you gave them good advice, they will remember those things. So my advice to the church is be there. Be there and support them.
Awesome. Amazing, amazing, amazing.
Brianna, can I ask one last question?
Okay, one last question. I know that information was very interesting and engaging, but we do have to wrap up. So yeah, one last question.
I think the information is so great, and I'm learning a lot. So my question is, do you know if Black history is a part of the school curriculum in Nova Scotia?
It is. It is.
Oh, it is.
It is.
Because I know in some places like New Brunswick, it still isn't. So
no, the school where I'm from, the people, all I can say is my people are a different kind of people. We are loving, we are strong, but we are also fighters. We will fight
Great.
for the things that we know are the right things, and we will fight for our kids.
Awesome.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. We want to thank you once again, Sister Marion, for speaking with us today and allowing us to hear your story.
Yes.
It was wonderful. It was really wonderful.
Really my pleasure. Thank you.
Amen.
Yes. So, folks, this is the end of our program. And as you can see, we have individuals on here that are willing to share their stories, and it's powerful. It's amazing. It's motivating, and we're learning. We're learning a lot about who we are as Black people, and we're learning to celebrate that. And I think that's wonderful. So please tune in every weekend, Saturday night at 6:30, and we'll be here discussing Canadian experiences throughout the ages. And we'll have more wealth of information to share with you. But as we close, let us close with a word of prayer. If Sister Eugene, if you wouldn't mind giving us a word to close out.
Okay. I don't mind. Just to make a comment, can panel members just
Sister Eugene, your mic is muted.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
Back to you.
Yes, certainly it's my pleasure to do that. Can I just ask that if the panel members can just stay back for a moment? Is that possible? Okay, let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for the program that we have had, Lord. It was not only informational, but Lord, it was also inspiring, dear Father. And so, Lord, I asked this evening that as we digest what has been said, because Lord, we know that where we are living in a society where there is racism, there is discrimination. But Father, help us not to be downhearted or to become discouraged, but we can use the information that we have received this evening to inspire others. Our children, their Father, we know what they go through at school, in society. But Lord, help us as parents, as a church, as a community, to be there with them, to stand by, to be a bedrock for them, so that they would be able to achieve and to be successful. Father, we thank you for Sister Marion and what she has shared. So Lord, I pray that you would continue to bless her and help her that she can share her story. It's a powerful story. So Father, help us and dismiss us at this time with your blessing. These I ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you so much for
Thank
logging in and tuning in with us. Please join us again next week at 6:30, same time, same place. See you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.